All right, we'll resume recording here. And I think we're just past the top of the hour. So why don't we go rolling a little bit? So for everybody, welcome back to week 2 of the extended SMU campus here in Dallas, Texas. I'd like to start by addressing the national landscape by simply wishing you all the best from SMU, from Snodgrass Partners, and more leadership. The environment in which we're all living right now seems to be growing more complex by the day with no simple answers or endings in sight. We're all really proud of the history that our respective organizations have developed. And we also recognize that our history means nothing without continued respect for those around us. Whether through means to elevate the standard of equality we demonstrate or by practicing safe and healthy daily actions, SMU, Snodgrass Partners, and more leadership all understand that we've not reached the finish line and need to continue to look toward that. So for good reasons, and for some tough reasons, college campuses are about to become part of the national spotlight again. And in that spirit of learning and growth, today the SMU Sport Management Program is excited to provide this second edition of the Snodgrass Partners Intercollegiate Athletics Tuesdays. So my name is Peter Davis. I am on staff as a professor as part of the SMU Sports Management Master's Degree Program. And if this is your first visit with us, welcome. And if you were here last week to see John Schuke and learn more about the academic side of what's going on, then welcome back. We're glad to have you back. If you did miss last week, or you have colleagues that missed last week that you'd like to share some of that information, I'd like to remind you we are recording our sessions, and on snodgrasspartners.com we have links to get you to all of the past recordings, and that'll include today's recording as well as we go through. So we're excited to have you with us and excited to share anything that you may have missed or may want to look at again through snodgrasspartners.com. And while you are there, you can poke around a little bit and learn a little bit more about what's going on at Snodgrass Partners and their approach to coach and administrator recruiting, as well as the broader form of athletics consulting that they bring to campus partners. Steve and Tom have built a great team that do a lot for their clients and do a great job. And at the same time, they recognize that there may be subject matter that they aren't themselves expert on. So Steve has developed a group of allied partners, a group of industry experts and consultants that they can lean on from Snodgrass Partners to cover every degree of an athletic department needs. So if you've got a need, then let Snodgrass Partners know, and if they can't help you, they certainly know who can. We can cover any campus need that may be out there. So today's featured guest is the founder and leader of one of those allied partners, and Jeff Moore is joining us from Austin, Texas today. And Jeff, if you're like me, I assume you love to welcome people to the state of Texas to explore and see all we have, but maybe today's not the day to do that. I think Steve and I are both expecting heat indexes of about 105 today. So I think shelter in place with air conditioning is probably a really good term this week. It's not a bad thing at all. So we hope you have air conditioning where you are. And if you don't need air conditioning today, then we may just be a little bit jealous. So good for you there. For those of you that have played sports or been involved in sports at an elite level, you know what a difference a coaching relationship can make to personal and team environments and team performance. It shouldn't surprise you then that coaching makes a difference in a high performance workplace as well. It just so happens that Jeff Moore is an expert in both arenas. As the head women's tennis coach for the University of Texas at Austin, Jeff spent 23 years there. He had 18 conference titles. He had 4 finals appearances and even brought home 2 national championship trophies to Austin. So since leaving the sidelines, Jeff's worked with over 30 schools through workshops and consulting events and consulting engagements, which means more than 100 administrators. So he knows how to talk to the group that we have today, and we're excited for that. He's also a recent author. So Jeff's book, Strive Together, Achieve Beyond Expectations in a Results-Obsessed World was recently published, and that's available on Amazon.com. So beyond the books, the boardroom, and the sidelines, a few Hall of Fames are lucky enough to have Jeff's name included as well. So that should tell you just how happy we are and how lucky we are to have Jeff joining us today. As we move through the material today, and as Jeff moves through the material, if you have questions or comments, please jump in. There is, I don't know your, there we go, your computer screen, but there is a Q&A button, and that will send the questions and answers to me, and perhaps Jeff to technology. I'm not 100% sure how that's going to work, but I think it does. Anyways, if we don't get to your questions, please know that we have those and we can get back to you with answers, but we'll do the best we can in the time we have together to talk. So with that, Jeff, let me say welcome to you. I'm going to turn the controls over to you, and let me begin by asking you how more leadership helps campuses, administrators, student athletes. And then as you chat about that, you can transition in today's topic of leadership for our group.
Thank you, Peter.
Of course.
I help leaders, actually business leaders, coaches, educators, build high-performing teams. Today's presentation, I have tons and tons of material. I'm going to concentrate it on one issue, and that's going to be, can we, in these ambiguous times, transition in athletics from managing to leading? So obviously right now, all of you out there that are athletics administrators, by the way, greetings from the Republic of Texas. All of you are in extremely stressful times. I know that after being in conversation with you, with a lot of you. Two crises have hit us back to back. The COVID crisis obviously stopped all of us in our tracks. We're having to make tough decisions about budgets, about personnel, a lot of difficult decisions. And we live in a world of ambiguity because no one knows what this virus is going to do. So we have to be very, very adaptable. The other crisis, of course, is the tragic killing of George Floyd. And that has opened a 400-year-old wound that this country has suffered from. And it has also unleashed a torrent of emotions, particularly from our young people. Today's young people struggle to maintain a strong sense of self. They've been conditioned to look for other people to do things for them. The big phrase I learned when I go out and work for teams is everyone saying to each other on the team, let's keep each other accountable. And I have to come back and say, well, oh, that's fine. But start with, why don't you be accountable? Why don't you be accountable? There's a self-accountability that's lacking. What's happening now with this tragedy, what I'm hearing from coaches are really excited because athletes are starting to stand up and speak out. So coaches are actually excited for the first time in a generation that they're going to get athletes who come in with some visceral gut level spunk so that they don't have to generate the kind of tension, the kind of discomfort, the kind of motivation that's required to achieve their goals. So you have a tremendous opportunity here. I can remember the athletes that I had in special times. I get goosebumps talking about them because they gave me pushback. They pushed each other. They wanted for themselves to get better. So as administrators, you have a decision to make. Are you going to do what college athletics leaders tend to always do when something difficult hits? Are you going to retreat and react? Are you going to survive? Are you going to survive in ambiguity, or do you want to thrive in ambiguity? If you want to thrive, let's talk about that. If you want to thrive, you have to decide as a leader what kind of environment you want to create. If you want to survive, you can go to the go-to, which is you can promote a culture. Culture is one of those overused buzzwords like collaborate, like talent, like fit, that's used so much, it almost doesn't have any meaning. If you're promoting a culture, what you do is you hire a firm and pay them lots of money to come up with a mission and core values that's packed with all the right buzzwords. Then you post those buzzwords on every wall, and then you talk incessantly about your values and your mission. That's what happens when you promote a culture. So it becomes a check the box exercise. And the problem isn't the mission itself or the core values, is that through that process, your core values remain in the abstract because you don't live them. If you want your department to thrive in ambiguity, you're going to have to dare to be different and cultivate a spirit, a competitive spirit. Cultivating a spirit itself is not about crafting or pronouncing. You don't need to talk about a spirit. You can feel it. There's no need to talk about it. So Southwest Airlines, for instance, the last two words of their mission statement is company spirit. I don't need to read their mission. I don't even know what their core values are, but I don't have to, because I can, every time I walk on a Southwest flight, it just feels different. On the other hand, when I step on most other airlines, sometimes I almost feel as if they're trying to make the experience stressful. Here's a mission statement, and this is so typical of another airlines. I'll read it. We, the employees of said airlines, customers, and community partners, together form a force for positive local and global change dedicated to the bettering standards of living and the environment where we and our customers live and work. We are a force for global good. Okay, there we go. It's all in there. What does it mean? What's the outcome? Cultivating a spirit is not a check the box exercise. It requires a serious emotional investment. It requires building genuine relationships. The most sacred, the most important relationship in an athletic department is the relationship between the coaches and their athletes. In order to cultivate a spirit in your department, you need to empower your coaches to cultivate in their athletes the willingness to work at the edge of their abilities. Right now, that relationship is being compromised at virtually every school, every coach I visit. There's a huge disconnect between administrators and coaches. It's almost as if they're living in two different worlds. At the core of this is how coaches today are evaluated, or at least how they see themselves as being evaluated. Two criteria. Number one, how did your team do this year? Which has always been part of the evaluation, makes sense. But the other piece is, did your athletes have a positive experience? Which sends the wrong message to the coach. What does positive experience mean? Well, I went to NCAA.org and I found out right away, because I went to the homepage and it said, first the banner says, creating a pathway for lifelong success. Then I scrolled down and saw the priorities: academics, well-being, and fairness. Now, at first I had to say to myself, wait a minute, am I on the risk management page or the home page? Academics, okay, you're there to graduate. I get it, that's a priority, that's important, okay? By the way, the grades you get, those should be your decision as an athlete, because there's absolutely no evidence that student success correlates to real life success. Just ask Google, who doesn't look at transcripts anymore. Well-being and fairness, okay? Well, I would assume that most athletic departments are committed to keeping their athletes healthy and safe. As one administrator said regarding the priorities, an administrator who had been a very successful coach, he said, well-being and fairness and academics, he said, is that all? Is that the bar? Those should be givens. And another senior administrator at a Power 5 school, about the creating a pathway for lifelong success, she said to me instantly, you know, in our exit interviews here, all of our athletes say the same thing. They're happy. And then she paused and said, is that all? So you have a huge opportunity here, but the problem is that you want your coaches to win, and yet you're telling them that the athletes have to be happy. Understand that the vast majority of schools out there, the vast majority of programs, coaches cannot recruit a bevy of blue chip recruits to guarantee that they'll at least be in the top 10 every year. Most coaches have to develop their athletes, and developing people, athletes for sure, is going to involve those athletes becoming uncomfortable. So the coach is going to have to put them in challenging situations. They're going to have to become uncomfortable. Well, uncomfortable is okay until the athlete becomes unhappy or the parents call, and then it's a problem. And then, so coaches today, many of them are living lives of quiet desperation. It's not as if they don't, no one out there gets along with their athletic director, but they're operating in parallel universes. So how do you empower coaches to cultivate that willingness to work at the edge of their abilities? What you do is you empower them to build championship teams, not winning teams. There's a huge difference. And this goes for any organization, including the businesses I work for. A winning team is built from the outside in. Everybody's a winner, by the way. You can spin it. Winning teams are obsessed with results. There is endless talking about winning. Winning teams are the masters of branding. They make decisions based on, how will this feel? How will we look? How will we compare? Championship teams are built from the inside out. And by the way, to me, a championship team is not necessarily teams that win the championship. If we had won certain conference championships at Texas, everybody would have wondered what's going on. We had overwhelming talent. They are the teams that overachieve, that get where the coaches and athletes get more out of themselves than anyone could have realized. So winning championship teams are built from the inside out. They are driven by a purpose that transcends winning. They don't have time to talk about results. And you know this now after listening to some of the great coaches around the country. They're too immersed in the process of getting better. There is a spirit on a championship team. No words need to be said when they walk on the field or the court. There's a sense, especially when you go to practice, that everyone involved is excited about getting better together every day. Winners compare. Champions compete. I call them strivers. The word strive means to struggle vigorously. But the reason I picked it is because of the origin of the word compete, which my friend Paul Wardlaw at Brown signaled me. He said, look at the original definition, to outdo another for prize and supremacy, strictly zero sum. But when you scroll down and look at the origin of the word compete, it says to strive together. Does that mean we all hold hands and skip and sing Kumbaya? No, it means that when there's any competitive endeavor, when you're competing with yourself or another person, even if it's just debating around a boardroom, there has to be tension, because without tension, there's no growth in the strength of a muscle. There's also no growth in a relationship. But in the end, a true competitor looks back on the experience and views the experience as having made them both better. Competitors are always reaching beyond their grasp. They are striving together. It's a shared purpose. There are two types of people in the world, strivers and arrivers. Strivers are always competing. They're driven by a purpose that transcends winning. They are, in terms of goal setting, they're always reaching beyond their grasp. If you give them a goal, they're going to try to stretch beyond it. They are driven to solve problems creatively. Arrivers, on the other hand, will seldom reach beyond their grasp because success must be within clutching distance. Arrivers are the masters of personal branding. It's all about creating a perception of success, even if it's not there. All their energy is poured into that. They suffer from what I call ROCD. Results oriented is passe now. results obsessive compulsive disorder. Whatever it takes, Peter, for me to compare favorably to you, it doesn't matter. I'm going to run with it. I'm going to go with it. So John Wooden once said, and all of you know who or remember who John Wooden is. John Wooden once said, your character is more important than your reputation, because your character is who you are. Your reputation is just who people think you are. And of course, back in the day when our parents would say your reputation is all you have, they meant that your reputation flowed from your character, inside out. Today, it's all about how you appear to other people. You have a great opportunity here. The academic side at your institutions is not going to prepare your young people to compete in the real world. The academic, there are many professors that I remember enjoying learning from and getting to know, but the game is get the degree, get the job, get the credential. It's grinding for grades. It's very, very, very linear. And in the real world, you're not evaluated based on your ability to take tests on information the way it's printed that you'll never use again, that research shows you actually forget. You never use it. You're evaluated in the real world, the businesses I work with, based on solving problems every day, and increasingly problems that do not have answers. This is why Google doesn't look at transcripts anymore, and other companies are following suit, because as Laszlo Bock, the original chief people officer who built Google's culture, said, I can play the game of school. He discovered there was no correlation between grades in school and their top performers. I can play the game of school. I can get the answer for the professor, but we're solving problems here that do not have answers. So athletics can be that place where you're teaching young people how to compete, because they are in ambiguity. The basketball point guard, the tennis player, you can't control winning. You can't control your opponent, just as in the real world, you can't control the opposition. So how do you empower coaches? How do you cultivate? First of all, understand what coaches do. Athletic departments are not like corporations for a number of reasons, but one of the main reasons is an athletic department has 15 to 20 semi-autonomous units, teams, and each of those teams is vastly different. The only thing the coaches have in common is that they're all coaching, but their sports are different, and coaches, believe me, I remember my experience, are a little different, a little off. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing what we are doing. So the first thing is to understand that. And if you have never coached, which I think is a huge advantage, but if you haven't, it's not a deal breaker. Get out there and learn about what coaches do. This is the main focus, is discipline yourself to take the focus off of winning. What do I mean by that? When you evaluate your coach, when you meet with your coach at the beginning of the year, of course you discuss what are your goals. I want to finish in the top of the conference. The AD might say, that sounds good, or I expect you to finish higher. It's time for you to contend for the whatever. So you establish that in the beginning meeting. At the end of the year, you evaluate what happened in terms of results. But in between, why are we talking about that? So in between, what you need to be talking about, not only to your coaches directly, but to the public, is what goes into winning, is what goes into solving problems, the resilience these kids are going to have to show. You can't control winning. And what happens is we all get trapped in, as athletics leaders, we all get trapped into fan syndrome. We all become fans. Oh, Peter, your basketball team this year, it doesn't look like they're going to win the conference championship. Or, wow, it looks like you have a real chance. Or, I don't say that to you, Peter. But I give off that vibe. Okay? And that's the wrong message. First of all, it'll keep you from putting your teams in the best position to win. Of course, you want to celebrate a great victory and console your coach in a tough loss, no question. But avoid that constant talking about results. Walk around and talk to your coaches. But again, do two things. First of all, and this is important in the workplace, any workplace, is let them convey the sense that you value them more as people than employees, number one. And number two, again, ask them questions and make observations about what's going on in their program. So-and-so is making a lot of progress with her serve. Any kind of observation like that about what's happening in terms of problem solving, in terms of religions, in terms of resilience, not religion for sure, in terms of how they're pushing each other, all those things that surround what it takes to win. Competing in sports, you need to go to practice too. And I don't mean you go to a lot of practices. Athletes practice 80% of the time. This is where, as a coach, this is where we get our work done, is in practice. And competing in sports is defined, according to in my terms, as making the opposition uncomfortable with purpose-driven execution. So Chad and Kirkland, you're both point guards on my basketball team. Chad, I want you to make Kirkland go left every time he comes down the floor. I don't want you to let him get into the scoring area. What's Chad going to have to do? He's going to have to execute. And in the process, he's going to make Kirkland very uncomfortable. Kirkland's going to have to execute. He's got to get the ball in the scoring area, and we want to start on the right side. So they're both competing, not only with themselves, but with each other. So in a real quick nutshell, that is what competing's about. So great coaches cultivate the willingness of Kirkland and Chad to work at the edge of their abilities, because Kirkland's still got the quicks. He can still, and Chad's not as quick. He's got to execute at a high level. So coaches cultivate the willingness for both of them to work at the edge of their abilities by creating problems, by creating practices that focus on problem solving like this. Focus on me trying to impose myself on you and make you solve problems, and myself solve problems in response. Number one, so you create that environment in practice. Number two, in the moment, when Kirkland gets to the scoring area on the right, not just once, but several times in a row, I reinforce that. How can you cultivate in staff meetings? When you're talking to your entire staff, once again, talk about ways in which your teams are getting better. Cite examples. Pick out individuals. Pick out an individual coach that maybe isn't so high profile, and discuss what you saw happening in practice. And by the way, when you go to practice and you talk to the athletes, make sure they understand that that's what you value, is their growth. When you talk to the public as an athletics administrator, do what Nick Saban and Bill Belichick and Greg Popovich do. Nick Saban gets furious at the media and just talks about getting better. He's not getting furious at the media because he doesn't like them. He is talking to his athletes. Bill Belichick doesn't talk to the media. He keeps it in-house. He's talking to his athletes. And Popovich talks about everything but sports. They're very much in-house, and it's all by design. And the last thing I want to talk about is what you send out to your athletes after a season. Right now, what's being sent out to all these schools are questions to your athletes, the athletes on the tennis team. Does your coach know what he's doing? Is she organized? What did you think of sports medicine? What did you think of this and that? Asking questions that that they should not ask because first and foremost, those athletes need to learn how to become accountable. The only people on many, many athletic departments, on many, many campuses who aren't held accountable are the so-called student athletes. They evaluate the coach, the AD evaluates the coach. Here's a evaluation I came up with that is a little bit different, and one AD before he retired was using it. Ask them questions like this to empower your coach. Ask them questions like this. During this season, did you accept responsibility for your own actions? Did you demonstrate persistence when confronted with adversity? Did you stand up for positions in team meetings. When you had a problem with the coach, did you go directly to the coach? When you had a problem with a teammate, did you go directly with the teammate? This athletic director stopped taking meetings on anything that didn't appear to be abuse related, because the people that need to learn to be accountable the most are the young people on your campus. That's what we need to get back to. So in closing, redefine what it means, what positive experience means. Joseph Campbell once said that college provides a bridge from adolescence to the real world. I don't think he anticipated that each young person's hand would be held across that bridge, but that's where we are now. So young people are standing up, they're speaking out. Take advantage of this, tap into that energy. Cultivate a spirit, and you'll win more in the process. Dare to lead, dare to be different, strive on. Thank you.
I love it. I love strive on. So I like the questions you were just asking, Jeff, just that you're suggesting that administrators ask of their coaches and such. Talk about for a minute the importance of questions like that, particularly in the environment we have right now. I have a neighbor, is a young woman across the street that plays at the University of Michigan, and it's been interesting to watch the interaction with her coach, her administrator, her fellow teammates. Most student athletes are they're driven anyways, right? But it's been interesting to watch her drive and to ask those questions now. Are there some questions that may be more important than others from a distance that you really do need to focus on?
Well, first of all, I disagree that most athletes are driven. Most coaches can tell you that the vast majority of their athletes are driven externally. And they've had a coach since they were 6. They've had parents who have been focused on building their resume. They don't have any original thinking. I mean, I had athletes on our 2 national championship teams and other great teams who gave me pushback. They were tough. They were what I call good high maintenance.
Yeah.
But shoot, they were 18. They didn't study enough. They partied too much. But they wanted to be better. So they pushed back. That's what we need to get back. I mean, if an AD's goal is to win, that's what a coach needs in athletes.
No doubt.
So I think that's the case. And what's happened is there's been this interference from administrators in that part. The job of administrative staff is to support. Obviously, a sports medicine person, I can't play someone who hasn't been cleared. And there are safety concerns. I get that. But it has to be my program and the decisions I make. And the key people to teach leadership on a campus are the coaches, because they're in the trenches with the athletes every day. And that relationship is hugely important. And a great coach looks for pushback. A great coach wants them to push each other. Yeah, they want Chad and Kirkland almost not to come to blows, but they want things to get tense. Because think about it, in practice, if you're just practicing to become a better player, well, anybody can play a sport. Practice to become a better competitor. And in order to do that during 80% time, you have to push each other. You have to make each other suffer. But it's not personal.
And if there's anything that's
so exciting, I get goosebumps again.
And if there's anything that's going to serve those student athletes well beyond their days on the competitive field or court or ice or course or wherever they are, is just that.
At one point, the average GPA of a CEO was 2.5. I think with rate inflation is probably 3.2 by now. I mean, no, seriously. And so people quit school. I loved certain professors, but I couldn't wait to get out of school. I was tired of this game. I want to do something. I didn't want to make an A. I wanted to make a difference. And school, the way schools, I'm big into education reform now, but the way schools are structured where you reduce people to numbers doesn't raise the bar enough, doesn't challenge them. And athletics can do that.
Without question. And I think all of those on the line today, we've got that, we've got that belief that athletics are so much more in the collegiate space. One question coming in, what sort of balance or responsibility do you have or do you suggest in terms of someone on the team or in a work environment for that matter, who's not buying into the culture, trying to bring them along or get them there versus cutting bait?
Well, that's a good question. I would cultivate a spirit, very good question, to the point where what I want, whether it's a staff and I'm the athletic director or whether I'm the coach, I understand that there isn't going to ever be, on any professional team, there's never 100% buy-in. But if I raise the bar that we're here to compete, to strive together, not just to work together and get the job done, we got a higher bar, then certain people, that's a very good question, certain people you, at the end of the day, you won't have to fire. They'll either leave because that bar is too high, they're just used to doing their job, fulfilling their duties, and that's fine. Most companies, most athletic departments are built like that, but in championship athletic departments, the bar is so high, can be so high, that at the end of the day, if they haven't left, thrown up the white flag, you can counsel them out. You can counsel them out.
Excellent. If there are any other questions, please feel free to type them in. As I'm waiting for those, I'll just a couple pieces of wrap up for me. The one thing I'm really going to take away from here, Jeff, was that winners compare and champions compete. That one stands out for me, because compete is such a broad term. That's in practice. That's in the classroom. That's compete for a voice or responsibility on the team. And you know, the comparisons happen.
And I think if athletic administrators realize that school is not competing, it's comparing, it's grinding. There's no connection between how you do in school and the real world. And I can cite so many examples of kids who just couldn't wait to get out of school and start doing something. But also the whole point that we're stuck between collaborate, which is a industrial revolution word meant to drive efficiency, the assembly line. You do the same thing over and over again. So the corporate world at some point around the turn of the millennium said, we need a word for teamwork. Boom, let's grab that one. People that had never led anything grabbed that word, and now it's everywhere. We're stuck between that and cutthroat. Cutthroat is zero sum. That's why the current definition of competing is so wrong. Striving together is so exciting, and boy, in the world today, we don't need to just work together. We need to strive together. We need to struggle vigorously. And it's very, very exciting to prepare kids for that world. And you can win, believe me, you can win a lot more with that approach.
No doubt. Yeah, that seems to make a ton of sense. A ton of sense. Well, an enormous thanks to you today, Jeff, for joining us. And you know, I know there may be additional questions that come through, and there may be questions that people want to speak to you about directly. And if that's the case, we'll put up your information here in just a moment, so you can be reached directly. But please remember, we will have this. This has been recorded, so you can review it. I think about 24 hours from now, a note will go out explaining how to get to that information for those of you viewing, and then feel free to share that with others. And likewise, feel free to share with those in your athletic departments or other colleagues that next week we are going to feature Dave Cerati, who's the founder at Front Porch Athletics, and they deal primarily with athletic departments and the communications and marketing initiatives. Dave's going to be sharing his insight on the important topic of marketing and external relations through the specific lens of revenue generation, which is becoming obviously extraordinarily important given our current environment. So share that information as you will. We've got the upcoming other upcoming subjects online here on the screen here. And in the meantime, if you've got any questions, let me put up the final screen, which will share with you the information that we do have. You can reach me at SMU. Certainly, Snodgrass Partners, there's their website, which is also where the webinars are being housed, the recordings, and then a information email address there, and then Jeff Moore's information at the bottom, along with a picture of the covers of his book that is available at Amazon.com right now. Although I did look last night, Jeff, it said there were only like 8 copies left. It said more were coming, but make sure Amazon's got some copies for you out there.
Are we going to give prizes to the best questions?
I think we can. I think we can. We had another question come in, so why don't we take care of that offline? But I'll let you ask. We can.
We'll announce it.
Yeah. Okay. So we can tell. Let's give. I've got one more question. Let's fit it in here. And let's see. What is the best way to promote or share your state-of-the-art evaluation to administrators throughout the country?
Well, through consulting or workshops or a presentation. I'll just share one super quick story with you. I did a two-day workshop at a Power 5 school and with the head coaches, all the head coaches, most of the head coaches. And it went really well. So day 2, administrators started showing up and they sat on the top row of this theater. And I passed out the evaluation, which has 10 statements like the ones I read to you. I passed it out to all the coaches, hard copies. And I was a little bit nervous about it, but because what happened then is almost to a person, every one of those coaches turned around to the administrators and said defiantly, this is what we need to be asking the athletes, our athletes. So I think it's really, really important. And again, when I say positive experience, I want to define it as challengingly positive. At the exit interview, what I want to hear is, if I'm an AD, is I want to hear, I didn't know how to push myself till I got here. I want to hear something like that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, good. Well, I think Chris Russell was the question there. So I think we have, Chris, we've got your email address, so we'll get in touch with you, but we'll get a copy of Strive Together to Chris. Isn't that right, Jeff?
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. And maybe that Tom Jacobs guy too.
No, I don't know about that. Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And please join us again next week and beyond. And until then, be safe and be well. Thank you so much. Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Thank you, Peter.